What I would the phrase that I use again and again is we have to talk about grief and gratitude. And the way that I would say it is we have to learn to pray or learn to talk to God the way the Psalms talk to God. About 40% of the Psalms are Psalms of lament. And probably about half the Psalms are Psalms of praise. And if I were in a position where I could dictate what people should do in their worship services, and it's very clear to me I'm not, but if I could, I would say that every worship service for the foreseeable future needs to have moments of grief and moments of gratitude, moments of lament where we use the Psalms of lament, and moments of praise where we thank God for what we have, because we live in this odd crashing between grief and gratitude that every one of us has experienced grief because of COVID. And most of us can look around and say, there are things that I am grateful for, that at least I have a roof over my head, or at least I have, whatever it is that we can think about. And we live in this tension. And somehow the church has accidentally taught us that we can feel either grief or we can feel gratitude, but we rarely feel them at the same time. Yet the real difficulty that many of the Christians that I know are experiencing is if they feel grief, they think, oh, no, I'm supposed to say, I want to say, be thankful to God. Or if they feel ingratitude, they go, no, I gotta feel grief with in solidarity with others. And they feel this kind of sense of churning. When in fact, the Psalms are designed to do just exactly both of those things. They're designed to say, the message of the Psalms of Lament is God can handle your honesty, even and especially when you're angry at God. And many of our churches, whether Pentecostal or traditional Presbyterian or what, are taught you're not allowed to be angry at God. Well, the only way you're not allowed to be angry at God is you don't read the Psalms. John Goldingay, who is one of the top 5 Old Testament scholars in the world. You can debate on who's, what order they're in, but he's going to be one of the top 5. Here is his definition of the Psalms of Lament. It is the people of God shaking their fist at God and saying, God, you promised it wouldn't be this way. We need to be able to teach our people to have that kind of honesty before God as a way that we do together. Because then it can have the kind of honest relationship that the Psalms cry out for us to have. So we can talk later about what kind of routines and all that stuff. But if you ask what's next is a deep sense of grief and gratitude together in a way that people find deeply disconcerting.
And I think I would add a third G, which is guilt. That the people in my context whose parents didn't die because they were able to pull something off for them, that those people have a deep sense of survivor guilt. And so it's like, how do we come to before God with that, with all of thatness, right?
Yeah. I mean, and part of what you're talking about is we have to have a sense of privilege. For example, I'm a white guy. And the reaction that my wife and I had to COVID is we just stayed home. We sat in our house with our good bandwidth and did all of our work. And because my parents are at risk, the only time I would go out is literally on Wednesdays. I drive up to Ventura where they live, and I would check on them and make sure they hadn't gone out during the week, and that my siblings and I would bring them their groceries. And other than going to the doctor, they didn't go out. There's a level of privilege that allows that to happen. And, a lot of the people that you're talking about, Alexia, didn't have that as one of their options because the jobs and the things that they needed to support their families required them to be at risk in a way that my job allowed me just to kind of hunker down and wait for it all to be over.